What if I told you that the fear you've carried your entire life, the fear of death, of endings, of losing everything, is based on a lie so deeply ingrained, you didn't even know it was there? From your earliest moments, you were taught to see life as a straight line, a timeline with a beginning and an end. You were told that you were born, that you live, and that one day, inevitably, it will all disappear. That you will disappear. The world shaped you with this belief. You saw it in the stories you were told, in the way people mourned, in the quiet terror in their eyes when someone spoke of the unknown. You learned to flinch at the thought of your last breath, to dread the silence that follows. But what if that silence isn't empty? What if it's not silence at all, but a doorway? You've been walking through life thinking you are just this body, this mind, this personality. You were never told that these are only garments you wear for a little while. The truth? You are not a linear being. You are not a moment in time. You are not a single story that starts and stops. What you truly are cannot be touched by death. What you truly are has never truly begun, and therefore cannot end. The greatest lie you've been told is that you are separate, from others, from source, from eternity, that when your body dies, you end. That your awareness, your memories, your essence, all dissolve into some abyss. But what if death is not the great eraser? What if it's the great revealer? The systems around you, society, culture, religion, even parts of science, have reinforced this falsehood again and again. Not because they were malicious, but because they too forgot. Generations have passed down this forgetfulness like an inheritance. They told you stories to help you sleep at night, to keep you from asking too many questions. But those stories were simplified, distorted, clipped at the edges to make them more digestible, less threatening. They said, be good, follow the rules, live a decent life, and maybe, just maybe, you'll be saved. As if salvation was something external, something to be earned or gifted to you by an authority outside yourself. But here is the unshakable truth that's been buried beneath all of that noise. You are already eternal. Before you took your first breath in this life, you already were. And when you exhale your last, you will still be. Nothing essential about you can be lost. Nothing real can die. So why were you never told? Because if you remembered that you are eternal, that the soul within you cannot be destroyed, controlled, or confined, then you would no longer be afraid. And if you were not afraid, no one could use that fear to steer your life. You would become sovereign, untouchable, free. Think about it. A world full of people who no longer fear death. What would that look like? People who no longer make choices based on scarcity, who no longer grasp at power, attention, or material things just to feel safe. People who don't shrink themselves to avoid punishment, or trade their truth for acceptance. A world like that would be unrecognizable to the one you know now. And yet, that is the world you begin to step into the moment you see through the illusion. You are not meant to fear death. You are meant to understand it, to see it clearly. You are meant to remember that death is not an ending, it is a shift, a change of frequency, a return. And once you understand that, your entire life begins to change. Because when you no longer fear the end, you stop fearing the beginning. You stop hesitating. You stop dimming your light. You start living. You've felt this truth before, haven't you? In those quiet moments when the noise of the world faded and something deeper stirred within you. Maybe it was while watching the sunset stretch across the ocean, or holding someone you love as they slipped beyond the veil, or waking from a dream that felt more real than waking life. In those moments, you weren't afraid. You were aware. Something inside you knew, this is not all there is. That something inside you is the soul. And it's been trying to speak to you your entire life. It speaks in feelings, in intuition, in dreams. It nudges you when something isn't right. It whispers to you when you're about to forget. But the world taught you to ignore those whispers. It told you to focus only on what you can see, measure, touch. As if the invisible wasn't just as real, if not more so. And that's where the lie became dangerous. Because when you believe you are only a body, only a name, only this brief flicker of time, then every setback becomes a tragedy. Every loss becomes unbearable. Every mistake feels permanent. You live in fear of the clock. You rush, you grasp, you panic, you try to squeeze meaning out of a life you believe will vanish too soon. But what if you didn't need to rush? What if nothing is lost? What if every version of you, past, present, and future, is still alive in the vast network of consciousness that is your soul? This is not fantasy. This is not wishful thinking. This is remembering. You were taught to forget. But forgetting was never meant to be permanent. It was part of the game, the challenge of remembering yourself in the midst of illusion. And here you are, remembering. You are not here to suffer. You are not here to be punished or tested. You are here to explore, to expand, to create. The soul does not judge you. It only learns, and it learns through contrast. Through joy and grief, through love and loss, through lifetimes of experience. You see, the soul doesn't just live once. It lives many times, in many ways, as many people, but not in the way you've been taught. Reincarnation is not a wheel you're trapped on. It's not some karmic treadmill of debt and repayment. It is your soul's exploration of itself, from every angle. Each life is like a chapter in a vast novel, not separate books, but a single unfolding masterpiece. And you, right now, are a line in that chapter, a breath, a sentence filled with meaning. So what happens when this life ends? You don't disappear, you expand, you become more of what you already are. The fear dissolves, the illusion fades, and what remains is you, unchanged. Except now you remember. This is what no one told you, not because they didn't care, but because they forgot to. But you don't have to forget anymore. You don't have to live in fear of death. You don't have to cling to this life as if it's your only shot. You can begin to live with open hands, with a fearless heart, with the quiet certainty that no matter what happens next, you continue. Not because you're special, but because you are soul, and the soul does not die. It simply wakes up. What if everything you think you are, your face, your name, your age, your memories, is just a temporary costume worn by something much larger, much older, much more mysterious than you've ever been told? From the moment you opened your eyes in this lifetime, the world began assigning you labels. They told you what to call yourself, what you could and could not be, what success looks like, what failure means. They taught you to identify with your body, as if this skin and bone construct is the beginning and the end of who you are. But deep inside, something in you has always questioned it. Maybe you've looked in the mirror and felt like a stranger. Maybe you've stared at your own hands and thought, this isn't all of me, and you were right. It never was. You are not just a body, you are not just a mind shaped by experience, you are not just a byproduct of biology, upbringing, and social programming. You are consciousness, pure, radiant, multidimensional awareness temporarily focused through a single point in space and time. You are not a human being striving to be spiritual. You are a spiritual essence, exploring what it means to be human, for a moment. Your soul is not something separate from you, not something you carry like luggage or something you'll meet after death. You are your soul, right now, fully, completely. The issue isn't whether the soul exists, the issue is whether you've forgotten that you are it. And for most of your life, you've been taught to forget. You've been conditioned to narrow your identity down to a single version of you. The version that pays bills, goes to work, has relationships, gets hurt, gets healed. But that version is only one lens through which your true self peers into this world. It's like mistaking a window for the sky. You are not the image in the mirror. You are the awareness looking through the eyes, the witness behind the thoughts, the stillness underneath the noise. This awareness, this soul, is not trapped in time the way your body is. Your body ages, your soul does not. Your body is born and dies. Your soul merely shifts its focus. Your body is one outfit in a closet of infinite expression, and just as you would not confuse the clothes you wear with the essence of who you are, it is time to stop mistaking the body for the being. You are not confined to this one experience. The truth is far more profound. Right now, you exist across multiple dimensions. You are living other lives in what you would call the past, and what you might imagine as the future. But from the soul's perspective, they are all happening simultaneously. Each lifetime is like a bead on a string, and your soul is the thread weaving through them all, connecting, learning, expanding. Have you ever felt an unexplainable connection to a place you've never been? Or a person you just met? but feel like you've known forever? Have you had dreams that feel more real than waking life? Moments of insight that came from nowhere. These aren't just quirks of the brain. These are echoes, glimpses from other facets of your being, other yous, living out other experiences. And those experiences bleed through in moments of silence, synchronicity, or soul-level recognition. Your soul is vast. You are vast. The part of you that's speaking, thinking, and navigating this world is only a sliver of a greater intelligence. Imagine an ocean that chooses to become a wave just for the joy of crashing on the shore. That's what your soul is doing. It is not here because it has to be. It is here because it chose to be. And you, the personality you call me, are part of that choice. Your body is a vessel, a sacred one. But it is not the source of your being. It is the vehicle through which the soul explores contrast, sensation, experience. Your senses, your emotions, your challenges, these are the instruments the soul uses to play the song of life. But the music is not the instrument, and you are not the body. You are the music flowing through it. The illusion that you are only this body is what keeps you stuck. It is what makes you afraid of change, afraid of aging, afraid of death. It makes you think that your value is tied to appearance, ability, or productivity. But when you remember that you are consciousness, not bound by time or flesh, you begin to see your life differently. You begin to see yourself differently. The soul doesn't care how much money you make or how many followers you have. It cares about how deeply you've felt, how much you've grown, how fully you've lived. It doesn't judge your mistakes the way your mind does. It sees them as lessons, not failures. It doesn't get caught in the drama of comparison or the illusion of scarcity. It knows there is only expansion, only experience, only evolution. There is a reason you're hearing this now. Your soul is calling you to remember, to come home to what you've always known but couldn't quite articulate. You are not limited. You never have been. You are eternal presence playing a temporary role. This life is not your prison, it's your playground. The pain you felt, that was the soul learning contrast. The joy, that was remembrance. The stillness in between, that was the soul speaking directly to you. You are not just a body, but that does not mean the body is meaningless. On the contrary, it is sacred. It is the paintbrush your soul uses to create art in a world of form. But don't confuse the paintbrush for the artist, and don't mistake the artwork for the only masterpiece you've made. This is one canvas, one creation. There have been others, there will be more. But this one, you, matters deeply. Because through this expression, the soul is revealing a new aspect of itself, something never seen before in the same way. You don't have to wait until death to connect with your soul. You can feel it now, in your breath, in your stillness, in the spaces between your thoughts. You don't need anyone to give it to you. No system, no ritual, no permission slip. The soul is already here, quietly pulsing beneath your everyday awareness, waiting for you to look inward and say, I remember. And once you do, things begin to shift. You stop living like a machine. You stop chasing validation. You start listening more deeply, loving more fully, choosing more freely, because you're no longer living in fear of not being enough. You realize you are already whole. This isn't something you have to earn. You don't need to climb spiritual mountains or recite endless affirmations to become worthy of your soul. You already are it. You always were. The only thing that ever kept you from seeing it was the illusion that you were separate. But you are not separate. Not from your soul. Not from source. Not from the many other aspects of yourself living out other stories across time and space. You are a field of consciousness, living, breathing, expanding in all directions at once. So take a breath, close your eyes, not to escape the world, but to enter it more fully, the real world, the unseen one, the one where you are not bound by flesh or memory, the one where you are light, awareness, love, where you are the wave and the ocean, the drop and the rain, the flame and the sun. You are not just a body, you never were. You are the soul behind the eyes, the spark within the chest, the eternal awareness watching everything unfold. And now, finally, you're starting to remember. What if I told you that death is not what you think it is? That the moment you fear the most, the one where your breath slows, your heart stops, and everything seems to go silent, is not an ending, but a transition, not darkness, but awakening. You've been taught to see death as a final curtain, the last page of your story, the end of you. But what if that belief is based on an illusion, one so deeply embedded in your culture, your language, your mind, that you've never even thought to question it? What if death is not a termination, but a shift in focus? What if the moment your body dies, you do not vanish into nothingness, but instead step into a version of reality that's been beside you all along, just hidden behind a veil you couldn't see through? It's easy to imagine death as the great erasure, that when your body gives way, your consciousness collapses into non-existence. But that's because you've been taught to believe your awareness is dependent on your brain, that without neurons firing and blood circulating, the part of you that knows ceases to be. Yet that's not the truth. Consciousness does not arise from the body, it flows through it. Your body is the receiver, not the source. You are not the light bulb, you are the electricity. And electricity doesn't die when the bulb goes out, it simply returns to its wider field. The moment of death is not a fall into oblivion, it is a return, a release, a liberation. Imagine standing at the edge of a dense fog. While you were alive, you walked through that fog every day. You thought it was all there was. But now, as your body begins to fade, the fog lifts. For the first time in a long time, you see clearly. You remember. You realize you were never really separate from anything. You weren't confined to that single storyline, that name, that face. You were simply playing a role, and now the costume is being gently removed. In those first moments after death, many describe a feeling of overwhelming peace, not because they've escaped something, but because they've re-entered something, a wider field of awareness, a deeper truth. The tension of the physical world, the striving, the uncertainty, the noise, all of it dissolves like mist in sunlight. What remains is clarity, presence, a kind of homecoming that words can barely describe. You are still you, but you're more than you remembered being. And yet, it's not foreign, it's familiar, as if waking from a long dream and realizing that you had only forgotten what was always there. You remember the lives you've lived before, the faces, the choices, the lessons. You remember why you came. You remember that there was never anything to fear. This veil between lives, it's thin, thinner than you think. It doesn't separate you from death in the way a wall separates rooms. It's more like a curtain, gently swaying in the breeze. Translucent, soft, easily moved aside. And sometimes, in dreams or deep moments of silence, you've felt it. You've brushed up against it. The feeling that something else is there, just beyond your reach, but not beyond your knowing. You've been there before, many times. Death is not your first encounter with this shift. You've crossed this threshold in other lives, other stories, other expressions. And each time, you return not with loss, but with wisdom, with the full bloom of experience, embedded into the ever-expanding awareness that is your soul. If you think back to moments in your life when something ended, a relationship, a chapter, a belief, you might remember that the ending didn't annihilate you, it changed you, it rearranged you. It cracked something open that allowed something else to emerge. Death is like that, only more so. It is the most profound shift you'll ever experience. But it is not destruction. It is the soul stepping out of the constraints of time, body, and linear thinking, and returning to its natural state. That state is not sleep, it is not silence, it is heightened awareness, it is clarity without distortion. The kind of clarity you sometimes glimpse in those rare, crystalline moments of truth while you're still alive, when time seems to slow, and something within you whispers, "This is real." Imagine that moment lasting forever. Imagine that level of presence becoming your default. That's what awaits on the other side of the veil. The soul doesn't die. It cannot. It is not built on physical substance. It is awareness itself. Energy, yes, but not just energy. It is intelligence, memory, love, creation. The soul remembers every life it has ever lived, every choice, every breath, and it carries those experiences not as burdens, but as layers of light. You are not one life. You are many lives, braided together through the unbreakable thread of the soul. And death, that shift, is when the latest thread returns to the loom. When what you've learned, loved, feared, and overcome, weaves itself into the greater fabric of your being. So what really happens in the moment of death? First, there's the loosening, a detachment from the body, like slipping off a glove. It's not violent, it's not terrifying, it's subtle, soft. For some, it happens quickly. For others, more gradually. But in every case, what remains is awareness. You may still perceive yourself as having form, but not physical form. More like light, thought, vibration. You can see, but not with eyes. You can hear, but not with ears. You know, but not through thinking. It's as if your senses expand in every direction. Then comes the realization, I'm still here. That thought alone is enough to shatter lifetimes of programming, because everything you were taught told you that you wouldn't be. And yet, here you are, awake, present, eternal. Depending on your beliefs, you might see different things next. Some see loved ones waiting for them. Some see guides, or light, or a vast open space filled with peace. But what appears is not a trick, it's resonance. The after-death experience reflects what your soul is ready to integrate. It shows you what you need to see, in a form that allows you to understand, and slowly, gently, you begin to shed the layers of identity that no longer serve you. This is not judgment, this is not punishment. There is no tribunal weighing your sins against your virtues. There is only understanding. The soul reviews what it has experienced, not to condemn itself, but to learn, to see how its choices impacted others, to remember what it came to remember, and from that clarity, new decisions are made. Sometimes, the soul chooses to return, to re-enter the physical world in a new form, a new story. Not as punishment, but as exploration. Because from the soul's perspective, all lives are experiments in becoming. You return not because you have to, but because you want to continue creating, expressing, loving, evolving. And in this way, death is not an end. It is a re-entry into infinite possibility. You are not disappearing. You are expanding. Not fading, but blooming. Not ending, but shifting. So why do we fear it? Because we've forgotten. Because we've become so identified with the body, the mind, the temporary me, that we believe death takes everything away. But it doesn't. It only removes what was never truly ours to begin with. The masks, the stories, the limitations. What remains is the truth. The part of you that cannot be broken, cannot be lost, cannot die. That part is still you, always has been. And the moment you remember that, the fear begins to dissolve. Because what you are cannot end. It can only return. What if I told you that everything you've believed about the soul, that it's distant, hidden, something you might earn or lose, has kept you from the very thing your soul wants most? For you to remember that it's already here, living through you? You've been taught to think of the soul as something vague, something mystical, tucked away somewhere beyond the clouds, waiting to judge you when you die. As if it's a separate entity watching from above, a silent witness, perhaps, or a guardian keeping score. But the truth is much more immediate, much more intimate. The soul is not some far-off thing you meet at the gates of heaven. It is not an object you save by behaving properly. It is not a reward for suffering or a possession to protect. The soul is what you are. Not someday, not after death. Right now. Your soul is not asleep. It is not locked away, waiting for your physical life to be over. It is present, awake, participating in every moment you live. Every breath you take is its breath. Every thought, every emotion, every encounter you experience, all of it is the soul exploring itself through the lens of form. This changes everything, because once you realize that the soul is not something you're trying to become, but something you already are, you stop looking for salvation and start living from remembrance. You begin to understand that you're not here to save your soul, you're here to explore it, to unfold it, to awaken it in layers, to allow it to express itself through this temporary identity you call you. Oh, the soul is not a closed container. It's not limited by your past, your mistakes, or the circumstances you were born into. It is an open system, creative, fluid, and eternal. It is not a fixed point of light. It is a field, an ever-expanding field of awareness, capable of taking on countless forms, perspectives, and expressions. It does not sit still. It does not wait. It flows. It creates. It learns. It becomes. And here you are, a current within that flow, a flash of its creativity, a chapter in its infinite unfolding. You are not outside your soul. You are the soul, temporarily focused in this form, in this body, for a very specific reason: experience, not punishment, not debt, not a test, experience. And not just any experience, your experience. The unique, beautiful, painful, profound story you are living is not separate from the soul's evolution, it is the soul's evolution. So ask yourself, how would you live differently if you truly believed that your soul is here now, not waiting in the sky, not sitting on a cloud, but inside every heartbeat, every word, every choice? Would you speak more gently to yourself? Would you take more risks? Would you love more freely, knowing that you are never actually disconnected? There is nothing passive about the soul. It's not watching from a distance. It's immersed in this moment. It's not judging, it's experiencing. It's not confined, it's expansive. The soul does not fit in a box, not even a spiritual one. It defies definition. It does not belong to any one religion, culture, or tradition. It is not limited by dogma or philosophy. The soul existed long before you were taught to define it. And it will continue long after those definitions fall away. And because it is an open system, the soul is always reaching, always moving into new territories of awareness. You're not just repeating lessons from the past, you're exploring potentials that have never existed before. You're not here just to remember what has been, you're here to create what could be. Your choices matter, not in some moralistic, fear-based way, but because each choice you make is a brushstroke in the painting of your soul's journey. People talk about losing their soul, but you can't lose what's eternal. What they really mean is that they've lost touch, they've gone quiet, they've forgotten. But the soul doesn't hold grudges. It doesn't withdraw. It waits in stillness, not with disappointment, but with presence. And the moment you turn inward, even for a second, it meets you with love, not because you earned it, but because it never left. The idea that the soul needs to be saved has been used for centuries to control, to manipulate, to keep people afraid. But the soul does not need saving. It cannot be damned. It cannot be destroyed. It cannot be reduced by your flaws or elevated by your praise. It is what it is, indestructible awareness. And no matter how far you wander from it, you are always walking within it. There's nowhere else to go. So what does it mean to explore your soul? It means recognizing that your life is not random, that your deepest questions, your heartbreaks, your longing for something more, they are not signs of weakness, they are signals, invitations, clues. Each one is a doorway back into alignment with the part of you that remembers why you came, the part of you that knows this life is meaningful, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Because every time you move through pain and come out with more compassion, the soul expands. Every time you let go of fear and choose love, the soul expands. Every time you forgive yourself, try again, or simply take a breath and say, I am still here, the soul expands. You are not failing, you are unfolding, you are not broken, you are becoming. And that becoming has no endpoint, there's no finish line. The soul does not reach a state of perfection and stop. It doesn't graduate into some static bliss. It continues to move, to reach, to dream. Because the nature of the soul is creativity, not in the artistic sense alone, but in the truest sense of bringing something into being that didn't exist before. You are that creation, you are that spark. You are the soul creating new pathways of possibility, simply by living this life, right now, as you. This moment is sacred, not because it's rare, but because it's real. Every time you are present, you are in touch with your soul. Every time you feel deeply, joy, sorrow, awe, you are meeting your soul in motion. Every time you make space for silence, or beauty, or truth, you are giving the soul room to breathe. And yes, when your body one day returns to the earth, the soul will continue. But not because it was waiting for death to awaken, because it never stopped. Death is not the beginning of the soul's journey, it's just another shift, another change of scenery. The soul doesn't wait until you die to exist. It has been here all along, breathing with you, walking beside you, dreaming through your eyes. You were never separate. You were never alone. So stop chasing your soul as if it's somewhere else. Stop doubting your worth as if your soul is judging you. Stop waiting for a future moment to be worthy of connection. The connection is already here. The soul is already here. Right now, beneath every thought, beneath every heartbeat, beneath every layer of identity and belief, your soul is pulsing with light. Not someday, not later, now. What if I told you that the lives you think you've lived in the past are not behind you at all? That they're not over, not frozen in some historical snapshot, but still living, still breathing, still unfolding in this very moment. You've been taught that time is a line, that your soul moves from one point to the next, lifetime after lifetime, like beads strung on a necklace. But time is not what you think it is. Time is not linear. It's not a straight path from birth to death to rebirth. Time is psychological, it's experiential, it bends, it folds, it loops. And once you understand this, the way you see yourself begins to shift. Right now, as you listen to these words, you imagine yourself as one identity, one life, one chapter, but the soul is not bound by this limited version of time. From the soul's perspective, all your lives, what you call past, present, and future, are happening simultaneously. They're not stacked like books on a shelf, they're more like frequencies playing at once, and your current awareness is simply tuned to one station. You're focused on this version of you, right here, right now. But there are other versions of you living other stories, in other places, in other timelines, and they are just as real as this one. Your past lives are not behind you, they are beside you, they are you. You are not their result, you are their companion, and you influence each other more than you know. Think of your soul as a sun, and each life as a ray of light shining in a different direction. None of those rays are separate. They all emerge from the same center, the same source. You are one of those rays, and you are connected, always, to the others. Which means the choices you make here ripple outward. They affect the others, just as their growth, their decisions, their healing, affect you. This is not metaphor, it is vibrational truth. Have you ever experienced a sudden fear that seemed to come out of nowhere? A phobia that made no sense? Or perhaps a skill you picked up with almost no effort, as if you were remembering something rather than learning it? Have you met someone for the first time and felt a rush of emotion you couldn't explain? These are the fingerprints of parallel lives brushing against your awareness. They bleed through when the frequency overlaps, when something you do, or feel, or encounter matches a vibration in another timeline. Sometimes, these bleed-throughs feel like déjà vu. Other times, they come through dreams or flashes of imagery. Sometimes, you just know things. You don't know how you know, you just do. And in those moments, you're touching another part of yourself. A self that may be living in ancient Egypt, or a future version of Earth, or a quiet village in another continent, or a world entirely unfamiliar to your current mind. The soul doesn't organize lives chronologically, it organizes them vibrationally. So the lives that are most connected to your current one aren't necessarily the ones closest to you in time. They're the ones closest in frequency. That means that the emotional, mental, and spiritual themes you're working through now are likely mirrored in other versions of you. If you're facing abandonment in this life, there's another self facing loyalty. If you're exploring self-expression here, there may be a life wrestling with silence elsewhere. You are not isolated in your healing. You are part of a network of transformation, stretching across the multidimensional landscape of your own being. And here's where it becomes truly powerful. When you heal something here, now, in this life, you don't just heal it for this version of you. You release that frequency throughout your soul. You shift the entire field. That means your growth can lift another version of you who may be struggling to speak their truth. Just as their courage may strengthen yours in moments of doubt, you are collaborating across time. You are co-evolving. So the question becomes, how conscious do you want to be in that collaboration? Because you don't need to wait until you die to access this connection. You don't need to be a mystic sitting in silence for 20 years. You just need to become aware, to listen, to sense the subtle tugs in your intuition, the nudges in your dreams, the strange pull towards certain places, eras, art, or languages. These are not coincidences, they are breadcrumbs, trail markers, invitations from other selves saying, "Remember me." Some of your greatest gifts in this life may come from remembering those other expressions. You may find yourself waking up to talents you didn't earn in this lifetime, but cultivated across many. Wisdom that feels too ancient to be new, or relationships that feel strangely familiar, like you're continuing a conversation that began long ago, or never ended. This is not fantasy, it's memory, soul memory, and just as your awareness of them grows, so does theirs of you, because the veil between lives isn't fixed, it thins as your consciousness expands. The more awake you become, the more the lines begin to blur, not in a disorienting way, but in a way that reminds you how vast you truly are, that you are not one voice, you are a choir, and the harmony becomes clearer the more you listen. This doesn't mean you need to figure out every past life. You don't need to map them all out like a history project. What matters is the energy, not the details. You can feel into a theme, a wound, a strength, without needing names, dates, or proof. The soul speaks through resonance, not record books. You'll know what's relevant by how it moves you, how it stirs something deep in your bones. This life is not a standalone experience, it is part of a greater whole. And the more you embrace that, the more supported you become. Because you're not alone, you never have been. You have allies, other selves, working with you, cheering you on, sharing wisdom through the subtle threads of your inner world. And when you begin to live with that awareness, things start to shift. You stop seeing your struggles as isolated. You stop asking, "Why me?" and start asking, "What am I integrating? What part of my soul is calling for healing now?" You realize that you're not broken, you're multidimensional, and that your soul is not dragging you through lifetimes as punishment, but inviting you into the artistry of evolution. You can even send love across timelines. Yes, really. You can sit quietly, breathe into your heart, and direct compassion to any version of yourself, past, present, or future. You can speak to that part of you who's afraid, or lost, or unsure, and they will feel it, just as you've felt their strength in your darkest hours without knowing where it came from, because the soul responds to intention, to love, to presence, and in that moment, you're not just healing, you're reweaving the fabric of your being. You're bringing coherence to the field. You're waking up. So next time you feel drawn to something you can't explain, next time your heart races for no reason at the sound of a language you don't speak, next time you feel yourself pulled toward a mystery that doesn't seem to belong to this life, pay attention. It might be one of your other selves reaching out, not to haunt you, but to join you, to walk with you, to remind you that time is not a prison, it's a mirror, and that the past isn't behind you, it's beside you, living, breathing, waiting to be remembered. What if I told you that every strange feeling you've ever had, every moment of déjà vu, every irrational fear, every vivid dream that felt more real than waking life, wasn't a fluke or a glitch in your brain, but a message from another part of you trying to be heard? You've been taught to trust only what can be measured, to explain away intuition as coincidence, to dismiss dreams as leftover fragments of your daily life. But the truth is, those fragments you've been taught to ignore are often the clearest signals from your soul. They are echoes from other timelines, whispers from parallel lives, glimpses into the deeper fabric of who you really are. You are not a single self walking through a singular life. You are a multidimensional being, experiencing many versions of existence at once, and sometimes, those versions leak through. Sometimes, the walls between them grow thin enough for light to pass through. And when it does, it comes in the form of memory you can't trace, emotion you can't explain, insight that seems to appear out of nowhere. Have you ever walked into a place you've never been and felt a strange familiarity, like your feet already knew the ground, like your body already remembered something your mind couldn't name? That's not coincidence. That's bleed-through. It's when another version of you, living in another timeline, has left an imprint strong enough to be felt across dimensions. And because your soul is not a linear entity, those experiences are not trapped in the past. They are alive. They move through you. They surface as fragments, Pieces of memory, flashes of insight, moments of deep knowing. They show up when you least expect them, but always when you're most ready to receive. Those moments of déjà vu you shrug off? They're not errors. They're alignments. They're intersections between timelines, moments where the current path you're walking overlaps with another path you've walked, or are still walking, elsewhere. It's like the soul briefly remembering a fork in the road it's traveled before, and in that instant, something within you stirs. You feel it, you know it, but your rational mind has no file for it, so it dismisses it. But you don't have to. You can start to listen more deeply, because your soul is always speaking. And one of the ways it speaks is through the body. Those irrational fears that seem to rise out of nowhere, the anxiety around water, the aversion to crowds, the discomfort around certain people, they aren't always rooted in your current life. Often, they're energetic imprints carried over from another experience, a version of you that drowned, a self that was judged by the masses, a timeline where betrayal was felt deeply. The soul doesn't forget. But it also doesn't hold trauma the way the mind does. It stores it as data, as vibration. And when that vibration matches something in your current life, it gets activated. Not to punish you, but to be witnessed, to be understood, to be released. This is where intuition comes in. Intuition isn't guesswork. It's soul memory surfacing through feeling. It's a knowing that bypasses logic. When you just know someone isn't safe, or that they're important, or that something big is coming, it's not fantasy, it's access. It's your higher awareness scanning the vibrational field and recognizing patterns that your conscious mind can't see, because the soul sees in all directions. And it nudges you not with words, but with sensation, with resonance, that tug in your chest, that goosebump moment, that quiet voice that says, "Don't go there." That's not paranoia, that's not imagination, that's your soul whispering through the veil. And nowhere is this more apparent than in your dreams. Dreams are not just the mind's attempt to process the day, they are portals. When you sleep, your consciousness is no longer tethered so tightly to the physical. Your awareness loosens, expands, roams, and what it often finds are doorways into other dimensions of yourself. That's why some dreams feel so real, so alive. You wake up and for a few seconds, you're disoriented. You don't know which reality you've returned to. That's because the dream wasn't a dream in the traditional sense. It was another self, another timeline, another you. Sometimes you dream of places you've never seen, yet they feel more familiar than your hometown. Sometimes you wake up weeping from a loss you never experienced in this life. Sometimes you find yourself in relationships in the dream world that are deeper than anything you've known while awake. These are not illusions, they are messages, glimpses. You are not imagining other worlds, you are visiting them, and sometimes those dreams are not symbolic at all. They're literal, they're memories surfacing from another life, memories that your soul has decided you're now ready to integrate. Integration doesn't mean remembering every detail, it means allowing the feeling to move through you. It means acknowledging the wisdom, the grief, the insight that those memories carry. It means making space for the full spectrum of your being, not just the part you see in the mirror. Even nightmares can carry soul codes. A recurring dream of falling, of being chased, of trying to speak but having no voice. These aren't just fears, they're fragments, unresolved echoes, not because something is wrong with you, but because the soul is asking you to see more, to feel more, to open more. The beauty of this is that once you become aware of it, you can participate in it. You can set intentions before you sleep. You can ask your higher self to show you what needs to be remembered. You can keep a dream journal, not to decode, but to commune. And the more you give your dreams your attention, the more vivid they become, the more easily they deliver their messages. Because attention is frequency, and what you honor with your attention grows. And it's not just in dreams. Sometimes memory, intuition, and bleed-throughs happen in waking life. You walk past a stranger and feel an emotion that isn't yours. You hear a song and it opens a floodgate of memory that has no reference point in this lifetime. You hold an object or stand in nature and feel the presence of another world pressing in. These are not hallucinations. They are intersections. Your soul is multidimensional, and these moments are reminders that you are too. You don't have to do anything with these experiences, only witness them, honor them, allow them to unfold without trying to rationalize them away. Because the more you trust the soul's language, the more fluent you become. And that language is not always verbal, it speaks in symbols, in emotion, in energy, in knowing, without explanation. This is why healing doesn't always make sense logically. You can be doing everything right on the surface, but still feel a deep sadness, or fear, or resistance that you can't explain. That's because not everything you carry originated here. Some of it comes from other timelines. And yet, the healing is still available now. Because when you release something here, you release it everywhere. When you listen here, the echoes are felt across dimensions. You are a mosaic of lifetimes, a soul expressing itself through many masks, many names, many stories. And the fragments that surface, through memory, intuition, and dreams, are not interruptions. They are reunions. They are your other selves saying, "We're still here." And they're asking you to remember. Because you are not just one lifetime trying to become whole. You are wholeness, remembering itself through many lifetimes. What if I told you that reincarnation is not a punishment, not a cycle of endless suffering, not a cosmic prison where you're forced to replay your mistakes, but a conscious choice, a sacred act of exploration made by your soul again and again, all in the name of expansion? You've been told that reincarnation is about karma, that you're here to pay debts from previous lives, to suffer for your past wrongs, to balance some invisible moral scale dictated by a universe that's watching your every move. But that's a distortion. It's a story created through fear, a framework designed to make you feel small, guilty, and obligated. The truth is far more beautiful, far more empowering. Reincarnation is not punishment. It is permission. It is the soul's creative way of learning through direct experience. You are not here because you were bad. You are not here because you failed last time. You are here because your soul chose to be here, not because it had to, but because it wanted to. It saw something in this particular life, this timeline, this body, this set of challenges and possibilities, and it said yes. Not from a place of lack, but from a place of infinite curiosity. Your soul is a master explorer, a cosmic artist, a multidimensional architect of experience. It doesn't seek perfection. It seeks understanding. It seeks depth. It seeks contrast. And the only way to fully understand what it means to be human is to be one, again and again, from different angles. Imagine the soul as an actor in an infinite theater. Each life is a role, each incarnation a performance on a different stage, with different costumes, different settings, different scripts. Sometimes it chooses to be the hero, sometimes the villain, sometimes the healer, sometimes the one who needs healing. But every time, it learns, it evolves, it expands its perspective. It deepens its empathy. And like an actor who grows with each role, your soul becomes more textured, more nuanced, more aware of all that it is and all that it can become. This is not some karmic conveyor belt you're stuck on. It's a playground of consciousness, a canvas of creation. You are not here to be judged, you are here to experience. And sometimes, those experiences are messy. Sometimes, they're hard. But even in the difficulty, the soul is gaining something that could not be gained any other way. Not because the pain is the point, but because being present within the pain reveals truths that bliss alone cannot. Yes, karma exists, but not the way you've been told. Karma is not divine punishment. It's not a cosmic scorecard. It's energetic feedback. It's not personal. It's vibrational. When you make choices, those choices ripple through the field of consciousness. They generate energy. That energy comes back, not to punish, but to inform, to reveal, to complete the loop of learning. It's not about being good or bad. It's about being conscious. It's not about shame. It's about balance. And once the soul understands what it came to understand, the pattern dissolves. There is no debt, only information, only insight, only evolution. Reincarnation, then, is not about escaping a prison. It's about entering a school. Or better yet, a library, an infinite one, where each life is a book, and your soul gets to read, write, and live the story from every possible point of view. You've been the wounded. You've been the healer. You've been the warrior and the peacemaker, the child and the parent, the victim and the perpetrator. Not because you're being punished, but because your soul is learning what all of it means. And the more lives you live, the more complete that understanding becomes. This life you're living now, it's not random, it was selected. You chose the general themes, the major players, the archetypal experiences. Not every detail is scripted, there is still free will, always, but the stage was set with intention. You may have chosen to experience poverty not because you lacked abundance in a past life, but because you wanted to understand what matters when material security is stripped away. You may have chosen betrayal, not to suffer, but to learn forgiveness from a place of raw humanity. You may have chosen to be the outsider, not as punishment, but to remember your inner connection when the outer world feels foreign. These are not sentences handed down by a cosmic judge. These are choices made by a soul who is endlessly curious about what it means to love, to fear, to fall, to rise, to remember. You may ask, if I chose this life, why don't I remember choosing it? Because part of the design is forgetting. You see, full memory would make the game impossible to play. If you remembered every past life in vivid detail, if you knew exactly what would happen and why, if you carried the awareness of your eternal self without interruption, then the stakes of this human life would feel artificial. You wouldn't be immersed, you'd be watching from the outside, and the soul wants immersion, it wants full presence, so it temporarily forgets. But that forgetting is not failure. It is the veil that allows experience to feel real, and yet, the remembering is always available when you're ready for it. And many of you are starting to remember. You're feeling the pull towards something deeper. You're noticing the recurring themes, the strange longings, the unexplainable fears or gifts. You're seeing the patterns not as random, but as familiar. You're waking up to the fact that this life is not your first, nor your last, and that within you exists a depth of wisdom far beyond your years. That is your soul stirring. Not to escape the cycle, but to engage with it more consciously. And that's the shift that's happening now. We are no longer reincarnating blindly, bound by unconscious momentum. We are beginning to incarnate with awareness. We are entering our lives with clearer memory, with more intentionality. Not to correct, but to create. We are choosing this time, this planet, this moment, because something within us knows that the time for remembering is now. That the age of sleeping through our lifetimes is ending. That we are not victims of karma, but architects of evolution. This changes how you live, because if you're not here to suffer, but to explore, if you're not paying off debts, but expanding your being, if you're not a sinner on a treadmill, but a soul in a symphony, then every challenge becomes an invitation. Every loss becomes a teacher. Every relationship becomes a mirror showing you not what you lack, but what you carry from other lifetimes. And every choice becomes sacred. You can begin to ask different questions. Not what did I do to deserve this, but what am I here to learn? Not how do I get out of this, but what part of me is calling to be seen, felt, integrated. And in those moments of presence, the veil begins to lift. The soul steps forward, not to punish or to preach, but to walk with you, as you, because it's not above you, it is you. Reincarnation is not a cycle of despair, it's a spiral of becoming. You are not going in circles, you are rising, layer by layer, through each lifetime, gathering what you need, leaving what no longer serves, becoming more of who you truly are, not because you were ever broken, but because the soul is infinite in its expressions. And you, right now, are one of those expressions. Unique, chosen, alive, not to pay, but to play, not to suffer, but to remember. What if I told you that the person you believe yourself to be, the one with the name, the story, the preferences and fears, is just one mask your soul is wearing in this moment? A temporary role in a much vaster unfolding, a single note in a symphony you're only beginning to hear? From the moment you were born, the world began assigning you an identity. You were given a name, a gender, a culture, a language, and a set of expectations that slowly taught you who you were supposed to be. You learned how to fit into the world around you, how to be liked, how to survive, how to succeed. And in the process, you constructed a version of you that could navigate this environment. That version is what we call the ego, not the enemy, but the interface, the survival suit you wear to play the human game. But here's what no one tells you. That version of you is not fixed, it is not eternal, it is not even entirely real, it's a story. A collection of memories, behaviors, beliefs, and emotional patterns that has solidified over time. But that's all it is. A story, and stories can be rewritten, personalities can be reshaped, identities can dissolve. What remains when they do is who you truly are, the formless awareness behind the form, the consciousness behind the costume. You are not a fixed personality, you never were. Personality is fluid. It shifts with context, with growth, with experience. Think of how differently you behave with your family compared to your friends, how you were at 10 compared to who you are now. That fluidity is not a flaw, it's a glimpse of the deeper truth, that identity is a costume your soul tries on to explore different dimensions of itself. And just like an actor who knows they are not the role they play, your soul knows it is not the personality it's wearing in this life. The ego is a mask, one of many, not evil, not broken, simply limited. It is the lens through which you see the world, but it is not the light itself. The ego is not the villain of your spiritual journey, it's the character through which the journey is experienced. The problem only arises when you mistake the mask for the face, when you forget that who you are is not bound to the personality you've built. You may say, "But this is who I am, I've always been this way." But have you? If you peel back the layers, your likes, your wounds, your stories, what remains? What is left when you stop performing the identity you've practiced for years? That silence, that stillness, that is you. That is the presence that watches everything unfold but remains untouched. That is the you who has lived many lives, worn many names, spoken many languages. And in each life, you've had a different personality, a different style, a different way of being, but the one thing that has never changed is the witness. You are the witness, the silent observer behind every thought, every emotion, every identity. And that witness doesn't have a name, it doesn't need one. Because it is not confined by the character it animates. It is not limited to one lifetime. It is eternal presence, what we call the soul. And the you, watching this, the one who feels, who questions, who wonders, is just one face of that infinite being. This is why identity can feel so heavy, because we try to make permanent what is inherently temporary. We try to define ourselves with absolutes. I'm shy. I'm confident. I'm broken. I'm gifted. But all of those are states, not truths. They are experiences passing through you, not foundations you are built upon. You can experience shyness without being shy. You can feel broken without being broken. And the moment you realize that, everything begins to soften. You no longer need to defend your identity. You can allow it to evolve. You can let go of the need to always be the same person. You can allow yourself to contradict your past. You can give yourself permission to outgrow the version of you that others expect to see. Because that version is just one chapter in a much larger book. The soul is not interested in consistency, it's interested in expansion. And expansion requires transformation, which means the true sign of growth is not staying the same, but becoming someone new, again and again. And here's the paradox. The more you let go of who you think you are, the more your true self emerges. Not because you've found a final identity, but because you've created space for presence to move through you freely, without being filtered through the lens of a fixed story. When you stop gripping your personality so tightly, the soul begins to speak. And its voice isn't always comfortable. It may ask you to change careers, leave relationships, take risks, face fears. But it will always lead you to more authenticity. Not more performance, more truth. This is why so many people feel stuck, because they're trying to evolve while clinging to an outdated identity. They're awakening, but still holding on to the version of themselves that made sense 5 years ago, 10 years ago, last lifetime. But the soul is always inviting you to shed those layers, not to become someone new, but to remember who you've always been beneath the noise. Think of it like this: if the soul is the ocean, then your personality is the wave, distinct, visible, temporary, but never separate, always part of something larger. The wave may crash, rise, shift shape, but it never loses its connection to the ocean, and neither do you. Even the roles you've played in other lifetimes, the identities you once wore, they're not gone. They're stored within you as impressions, memories, energies. Sometimes they rise to the surface as intuition. Sometimes they shape your talents, your fears, your desires. And in rare moments, they speak to you directly, in dreams, in flashes of recognition, in sudden insight. These are not ghosts, they are echoes. Other faces of the same being you are now, you. And as you begin to remember this, you start to live differently. You become less attached to how people see you. You stop needing to prove who you are. You become more fluid, more authentic, more creative, because you realize you are not a brand to maintain, but a soul in motion. You stop asking, "Who am I supposed to be?" and start asking, "Who am I becoming?" And the answers change, day by day, breath by breath. This is the gift of remembering your soul. It frees you from the rigidity of identity. It reminds you that you are not defined by your past, your job, your trauma, your relationships, or your failures. You are not the name they gave you. You are not the box you were put in. You are not your social media bio or the persona you've curated. You are consciousness playing with form. You are presence dressed in personality. You are eternal fluidity pretending, for a little while, to be fixed. And the moment you stop needing to be anyone in particular, you become everything you've ever been. Every version, every role, every color of your soul's palette becomes available. And that is when true freedom begins. Not in finding the real you, but in realizing there are infinite real yous. And this life is just one of many doors your soul is walking through. So who are you, really? You are not just the face in the mirror. You are the light behind the eyes. You are the silence behind the thoughts. You are the vast, shape-shifting, ever-becoming essence that has lived 1,000 lives and is still unfolding. And whatever name you go by now, whatever identity you wear, know that it is sacred. Not because it's final, but because it is one note in the ever-evolving song of your soul, and that song has no end. What if I told you that death is not the end of you, not a vanishing, not a disappearance, but a continuation, a shift, a homecoming into something far more expansive than you've been led to believe? You've been taught to fear death, to see it as a wall you hit, a black void, a final breath where everything stops. But death is not the opposite of life. It is the continuation of life, in a different form. You are not your body, and so when the body is released, you are not lost. What happens after death is not a mystery to your soul. It is a process as natural, as sacred, and as intricate as birth. You've done it before, many times. You will do it again, and each time, something in you remembers the path. In the moment of death, there is no pain, not for the soul. The body may struggle, the mind may resist, but the deeper part of you, the awareness that has watched over everything, simply lets go. There is a lightening, a lifting, as if the weight of gravity no longer applies. It's not a fall into darkness, it's a return to brightness. Most describe it as a release, a gentle floating, a sense of coming home. The noise of the physical world fades, and what replaces it is silence, peace, and clarity. There is no confusion for the soul. Only the mind experiences confusion, and even that is quickly soothed by the loving presence that meets you on the other side. Because you are met. You are not alone. When you cross the veil, you are greeted by energies that feel familiar. Some may appear to you in forms you recognize: a loved one who passed, a guide you once prayed to, a teacher, an ancestor. They do not greet you with judgment. They greet you with profound recognition. They know you. They've always known you. They remind you of who you truly are, not as a person who lived a life, but as a soul who lived many. In the moments after the transition, there is often a resting space, a threshold between dimensions. It is not physical in the way you understand space, but it has form, it feels real, it is designed for decompression, for unwinding from the density of earthly life. In this space, you begin to shed the layers of identity you wore in your most recent incarnation, not to lose them, but to see them clearly. You begin to remember that you were not just that person. You were playing that role. And yet, the emotions, the relationships, The experiences, they are not discarded. They are honored. They are kept within the memory of your soul. Then comes the review, not a judgment, but a reflection. You are shown your life. Not as a punishment, not as a trial, but as an opportunity to understand. You see your life from multiple angles, not just from your own perspective, but from the perspective of those you touched. You feel what others felt in your presence. You witness how your choices created ripples, both beautiful and painful. But this is not about shame, it is about integration. The soul is not interested in labeling you as good or bad. It is interested in seeing clearly, feeling fully, and learning deeply. It watches, it feels, and it understands. And through that understanding, healing occurs. This after-death review is not imposed by some external authority. It is guided by your own higher self, the part of you that has always known the truth. And in that space, you don't resist the truth, you welcome it. Because there is no ego there, no need to defend or explain. There is only clarity, and that clarity brings peace. It allows the experiences of your life to complete their cycle, to settle into wisdom. You are not erased in this process. You do not become someone else. You remain you, only more so. Imagine your current identity like a single thread. After death, that thread is woven back into the larger tapestry of your soul. You don't lose the thread, you become the tapestry. You remember your other lives. You reconnect with other aspects of yourself. But you still carry the essence of who you were in this most recent life. That version of you is not lost, it is held, revered. It becomes one more expression of your infinite nature. And any unresolved emotions, any trauma, any attachments, you are given space to process them, to release what no longer serves you, to reclaim what still does. In this realm beyond physical form, communication is instantaneous. You don't use words, you use thought, energy, emotion. You can travel without moving, you can create with intention. Your consciousness is unbound, and yet there is still structure. There are dimensions, frequencies, planes of existence that align with your soul's vibration. You don't float in a void, you find yourself in a place that feels profoundly resonant, a place that reflects your frequency, your level of awareness, your soul's unique texture. Some souls stay in this space for a while. They rest, they study. They reconnect with soul groups, other beings with whom they've shared many lifetimes. They plan, they observe. They serve as guides to others still incarnated, and eventually they begin to feel the pull again, the pull to return. Not because they're forced to, but because the soul wants to evolve further. Because there are new experiences it hasn't had, new expressions it wants to embody, new wisdom to gain. The cycle continues, not out of compulsion, but out of deep curiosity and love. You don't reincarnate as a blank slate. You carry with you subtle imprints, familiar patterns, unexplained talents, magnetic connections. But the forgetting is part of the design. If you remembered everything from the start, you wouldn't be immersed. And immersion is where the richness happens. The forgetting is not a curse, it is a cocoon. And death is simply the shedding of that cocoon, a return to knowing. And here's the secret. You don't have to wait until death to remember. You can begin to touch that clarity now, through presence, through stillness, through reflection, through intuition. When you silence the noise of identity, when you open yourself to the inner world, you begin to feel it, that timeless part of you that has died 1,000 times and never once been destroyed. That part of you that watches life without clinging to it. That part of you that sees this moment not as the whole story, but as a sentence in a paragraph, in a chapter of a book that never ends. Death is not to be feared. It is to be understood. It is a sacred return, a conscious expansion, a shift from one form of awareness to another. And the more you understand that, the more fully you begin to live. You stop postponing your joy. You stop clinging to illusions. You stop fearing change. Because you realize you cannot be lost. You cannot be broken. You cannot be ended. The you, watching this right now, the one who feels fear, who seeks truth, who wonders what lies beyond, is not a fleeting accident. It is a flame carried through lifetimes, a spark of the eternal watching itself unfold in form. And when this particular story ends, that flame does not flicker out, it rises, it rejoins the fire. And it carries everything it learned, every tear, every laugh, every touch, into the next becoming. So the question is not what happens after death, the question is, can you begin to live with the remembrance of what never dies? Because once you do, the fear dissolves, and what remains is presence, power, peace. And that, perhaps, is the real secret. You've never left home, you've only ever forgotten. What if I told you that you're not here to be tested, judged, or weighed against a list of invisible rules, but to create? That your soul chose this life not to prove its worth, but to explore its own infinite potential through the sacred act of becoming? Every moment of your existence is a brushstroke on the canvas of eternity. Every experience, every emotion, every choice you make is part of a larger masterpiece your soul is painting across lifetimes. You were not sent here to pass some universal exam. You were not dropped into a difficult world to earn your place in a better one. That is the story you've been told, but it's not the truth. The truth is far more liberating. You are here to play with form, to experiment with energy, to embody love, fear, joy, sorrow, curiosity, and courage. Not because you must, but because you can. The soul is not a prisoner seeking escape, it is an artist seeking expression. It is a spark of divine source that thrives on experience. Its evolution does not come through punishment, it comes through freedom. Real growth isn't forced, it's chosen. And the soul chooses again and again to dive into new lifetimes, to wear new faces, to immerse itself in the vibrancy of existence, not to be purified, but to be expanded. You were not created to be a perfect servant of some external authority. You were created from the essence of Source itself, a fractal of infinite intelligence, born not to be tamed, but to create new realities. That's what you're doing here. Every thought, every relationship, every act of kindness, or courage, or expression, is not being measured against a divine scoreboard. It is being woven into the soul's tapestry. It is becoming part of the soul's unique signature. Think of every life as a song, a variation in rhythm and melody. Some are quiet, some are chaotic, some are filled with sorrow, others with laughter. But each one is a new composition. Not to correct the last, but to explore a different note, a different tempo, a different mood. The soul does not judge itself for a dissonant chord. It learns from it. It feels the contrast. It absorbs the flavor. And then it moves into a new creation, with that experience forever embedded in its essence. The idea that you must suffer in order to be worthy, that you must prove yourself through pain or sacrifice, has kept you chained to fear, but the soul does not require suffering. It simply allows for it, because within the realm of contrast, deep understanding is born. Yet even pain is not the end goal. It's a color in the palette, a texture in the painting. If you think your challenges are signs that you're doing something wrong, you miss the bigger truth. They may be exactly what your soul came here to experience. Not to punish you, but to open you. You are a creator. That's not metaphor. That is literal. Your consciousness shapes reality, not just in the external world, but in how you experience yourself. You are constantly sculpting your identity, your energy, your perception, and every act of awareness is a creative act. You were given the power to choose not because you must choose correctly, but because the act of choosing is the point. Even your mistakes are creations that reveal new layers of your being. When you step out of the belief that life is a test, everything changes. You stop obsessing over doing it right. You start asking what feels true, what feels aligned, what feels alive. Because aliveness is the soul's language. Wherever you feel most vibrantly awake, most connected to the present moment, that is where the soul is expressing itself most freely. That might be through art, or movement, or parenting, or learning, or teaching, or simply being. There's no singular path, no hierarchy of expression. The soul honors all forms of creation, whether it's building a cathedral or planting a seed in the ground. And when you begin to create from that place, from soul awareness, you step into a flow state. You're no longer trying to control the outcome. You're not creating to prove something. You're creating because something deeper is moving through you. You become a channel for something greater than the ego. You begin to realize you are not the creator alone, you are also the creation, the dreamer and the dream. The more you align with this truth, the less you fear failure. How can you fail when the point is exploration? How can you mess it up when the soul does not judge, but only absorbs, integrates, evolves? The fear of failure only exists when you believe there's a final exam waiting. But what if there isn't? What if you were never meant to graduate from being human, but instead to revel in it? To discover how many ways your soul can express light through the density of form. This shift in perspective doesn't make you careless, it makes you fearless. It frees you to try, to leap, to listen to your intuition and follow it even when it makes no logical sense. Because now you're not obeying a rule book, you're tuning into a rhythm, your soul's rhythm, and that rhythm is unique to you. No one else can live your life the way you can. No one else can express the precise soul frequency that you carry. That's not arrogance, that's truth. You are irreplaceable, not because you are superior, but because you are singular. A once-in-all of creation combination of experience, wisdom, emotion, and energy. That's why comparison is a dead end. Your soul didn't come here to match someone else's journey. It came to carve its own, to leave its mark not by being better, but by being true. And the more true you are to what's within, the more aligned your creations become, not just your external works, but your relationships, your daily choices, your presence. Even your healing is creative. When you choose to face your pain, to feel it fully, to understand it and release it, you're sculpting new neural pathways, new timelines, new potentials. You're writing a new chapter, not only for this life, but for the soul across dimensions. Healing is not about fixing what's broken, it's about integrating what was once rejected, and that, too, is a form of art. You are not here to get it right. You are here to get real, to get raw, to get honest with what lights you up and what dims your light. And when you stop asking, "Am I worthy of this path?" and start asking, "Is this path worthy of my soul?" you become unstoppable. The soul evolves through freedom, not restriction, through permission, not pressure, through play, not punishment. You are allowed to change, to reinvent yourself, to take your time, to start over as many times as needed. The universe is not keeping score. It is watching in awe as you remember what you've always known, that your life is not a waiting room for the afterlife, it is the masterpiece. And the masterpiece is not finished yet, it's still unfolding. With every breath you take, you are adding to the soul's canvas. Every moment of presence is another brushstroke. And when your time here is complete, that painting won't be judged, it will be celebrated. Not because it's perfect, but because it is yours. Wild, raw, beautiful, alive. You are not a student being tested, you are a soul being expressed. You are not here to pass, you are here to create. What if I told you that your past lives aren't buried behind you, frozen in some forgotten past, but living, breathing, and moving alongside you, whispering their memories through your emotions, guiding you through your instincts, and shaping your path in ways you can't always see? You've been taught to think of time as a straight line, one life following another, like beads on a string. But time, as the soul experiences it, is not linear. It is layered, simultaneous, alive in all directions. Your other lives are not behind you, they are beside you, within you. And the more you awaken to this truth, the more you begin to notice the threads, the emotional echoes, the unexplainable pull toward places, people, fears, desires. These are not random, they are the soul speaking to itself, across dimensions of identity. Imagine your soul as a great tree, vast, ancient, ever-expanding. Each incarnation is like a branch, unique and separate in its angle and reach, but rooted in the same trunk, drawing from the same essence. The lives you've lived before, and the ones you will live after, are not isolated stories. They are part of a unified field of becoming. And while each life may feel like an individual journey, in truth, they are connected, constantly cross-pollinating one another with insight, energy, and growth. There are moments when this becomes obvious, a fear you've carried since childhood, but can't trace to anything that's happened in this life. A gift you've always had, a musical ear, a healing touch, a natural ability to speak a language you've never studied, a recurring dream that feels more like memory than imagination. A person you meet and instantly feel you've known forever. These are not coincidences. They are soul fragments rising to the surface, glimpses of your multidimensional self. You are not a single lifetime. You are a collection of lifetimes, each contributing to the whole, each leaving behind emotional imprints, energetic signatures, and lessons learned or still unfolding. And sometimes, when one life reaches a point of awakening or healing, it sends a wave through the entire field. You may have felt this, a sudden lightness after years of heaviness, a release of a fear that was never logically yours, a breakthrough that didn't seem to come from anything external. These are moments when your soul, through another aspect of itself, healed something you didn't even know was wounded. You are benefiting from choices being made in other lives, and likewise, your growth ripples outward into them. This is not fantasy. This is the quantum nature of your being. You exist across multiple timelines, and the veil between them is thinner than you think. Every soul has a network of incarnations, some happening in what we perceive as the past, others in the future, and many overlapping in ways we don't fully understand. And while your conscious mind may not always access them, your deeper self is aware. There is a shared pool of wisdom that each incarnation draws from. You are constantly exchanging energy, ideas, and insights across lives, like messages being passed through a dream. Sometimes the cross-pollination shows up as emotional inheritance. You might find yourself reacting strongly to a situation that doesn't warrant such intensity. A panic in tight spaces. A sadness triggered by a specific sound. A resistance to a certain profession or type of relationship. These can be echoes, unresolved patterns carried from another life, surfacing in this one for release or completion, not to punish you, but to give you an opportunity to alchemize the energy, because healing in one lifetime frees the others. Every time you choose love over fear, awareness over reaction, presence over avoidance, you're not just changing your life, you're changing the entire soul field. This is why sometimes, when you step into alignment, everything in your life begins to shift, faster than expected, more gracefully than seems possible. That's not coincidence. That's momentum created by the harmony of your soul's many selves converging around a single breakthrough. You are never healing alone. You are never growing alone. You are walking alongside other versions of yourself, and they are walking with you. You are many, moving as one. There is also beauty in how lessons are shared. You may be learning how to trust in this life because another part of you once misused power. You may be learning gentleness here because you once lived with violence. You may be embracing creativity now because another version of you suppressed it for a lifetime. This is not punishment. This is balance. The soul wants wholeness, so it learns in layers, through contrast. And the deeper your awareness, the more intentional that learning becomes. Soul families exist too. You are not only connected to your other lives, but to others who have journeyed with you across time. You've played many roles with these beings, lovers, siblings, enemies, teachers. The dynamics may shift, but the connection remains. You recognize them by the energy, the immediate sense of familiarity. Often, the deepest challenges and most profound awakenings are triggered by these souls. Because they know you, they've helped you grow before, and they will again. When you feel profoundly alone, remember, your soul is not isolated. You carry the resonance of countless experiences, countless connections. You are never truly cut off from yourself. There is a council within you, a lineage of lifetimes holding you. Sometimes, in stillness, you can feel them. You might sense an ancient version of yourself sitting with you in silence, or a future self sending you encouragement in a moment of doubt, or a parallel you whispering inspiration into your dreams. These are not fantasies, these are facets of you, and the more you listen, the more clearly they speak. This awareness doesn't just change how you see yourself, it changes how you live. You begin to approach life less like a series of random events, and more like a grand orchestration. You stop fearing mistakes, knowing that each decision ripples into a field far larger than this moment. You stop clinging to identity, realizing it is only one thread in a vast tapestry. And you stop asking, "Why me?" and start asking, "What is my soul showing me through this?" This is where true compassion begins. Because as you recognize the multiplicity within yourself, you begin to see it in others. You realize that the person who hurt you may be acting from a wound carried from another time, that the child who struggles to speak may be carrying the memory of lifetimes silenced, that the stranger you feel drawn to may have once been a great love. You begin to walk through life with softer eyes, with deeper reverence, because you see the soul behind the form. This is the truth that's been hidden in plain sight. You are not alone in your journey, not because others walk beside you, but because you walk beside you. The versions of you that were, the ones that are, the ones yet to come. They are all here, quietly influencing, gently guiding, always connected. You are not fragmented, you are not scattered. You are whole, just more vast than you've ever been allowed to believe. You are the past life, the future self, the healer and the wounded, the master and the student. You are the dreamer and the dream, all woven together in an infinite spiral of becoming. And the more you remember, the more the pieces begin to click, the patterns reveal themselves, the path becomes sacred again, not because it leads somewhere final, but because it leads deeper into you. You are not just one, you are many, and every version of you is rooting for this one. What if I told you that the moment you become truly conscious, aware not just of your body, your thoughts, or your surroundings, but of the multidimensional nature of your being, you begin to change not only this life, but all of your lives, past, parallel, and future. There's a hidden power in awareness that no one ever taught you to harness. Not just the kind of awareness that notices your breath or observes your emotions from a distance, but a deeper awareness that pierces through the illusion of separateness and sees life through the eyes of the soul. The moment you begin to wake up to this deeper level of consciousness, you start living differently. Not because the world changes around you, but because your perception of reality stretches to hold more of what is actually there. You start to see patterns in your life, not as punishments or coincidences, but as echoes, reflections of choices made by other parts of you in other lifetimes, surfacing now to be witnessed, acknowledged, and transformed. You begin to recognize that every decision you make now, every moment you choose awareness over reaction, love over fear, alignment over habit, you're not just shaping your current experience, you're sending ripples across your soul's entire tapestry. Because consciousness is not confined by time. It reaches in every direction. Your present moment awareness is like a signal, a vibration that expands outward, influencing not just who you are now, but who you've been and who you are still becoming. When you wake up to this truth, you become the alchemist of your own soul. You stop being a passive participant in life and begin to create consciously. That's the difference. Not just living, but living awake. And what happens when you truly begin to live awake? You stop fearing death, not because you've seen it or studied it, but because something inside you remembers. You remember that you've done this before, that you've returned again and again, not as punishment, but as choice. You remember that death is not darkness, it's expansion, not an ending, but a transformation of form, and in that remembering, fear begins to dissolve. And with the fear of death gone, something extraordinary happens. You finally give yourself full permission to live. You stop waiting. You stop holding back your truth for a safer moment that never arrives. You stop silencing your inner voice to keep others comfortable. You stop playing roles and start showing up in your full essence, no longer diluted by the need to be understood. Because now, you understand yourself, and that's enough. This kind of conscious awareness begins to affect every part of your life. Relationships shift, not because people change, but because your frequency no longer matches certain dynamics rooted in unconsciousness. You begin to attract others who are also remembering. You begin to feel magnetized toward environments, ideas, and experiences that reflect your soul's evolution. You no longer chase validation from the outside, because your awareness has moved inward, where the real power lives. Even your body begins to respond. Conscious awareness softens the nervous system, stabilizes the heart, brings presence into the cells. You start to notice subtle energy movements. Your intuition strengthens. You begin to feel when something is aligned or misaligned without needing proof. You trust the yes that rises in your chest, and you honor the no that curls in your stomach. Your awareness becomes your compass, and the more you listen, the clearer the path becomes. You begin to see your life not as a disconnected chain of events, but as a living, breathing story, woven from soul-level choices. The people who hurt you, teachers in disguise. The moments you collapsed, thresholds into new strength. The dreams that never came true, redirections towards something your ego couldn't yet comprehend. With conscious awareness, nothing is wasted. Nothing is random. Everything becomes sacred, because everything becomes seen. You realize that you are not bound by the past, you're informed by it, yes, but you are not trapped in it. You can meet an old pattern with new awareness and rewrite its meaning. You can feel an old wound and offer it a kind of love it never received the first time. You can make a new choice that sends healing backward through your lineage and forward into generations you'll never meet. That is the power of awareness. It doesn't just change you, it changes the entire field around you. This is why so many ancient teachings emphasized presence, why mystics and sages spoke of awakening not as an escape from the world, but as a deeper immersion into its essence. Because when you wake up, you stop fighting life, you begin to merge with it, you stop seeing yourself as a victim of fate and begin to recognize yourself as the creator of experience. You stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start asking, "What part of me is being called to rise?" You begin to feel compassion not just for others, but for every version of yourself you've ever been. You stop judging your past selves and start integrating them. You hold space for the younger you who didn't know better, the wounded you who lashed out, the afraid you who hid their light. And as you do, something profound happens. Those fragments begin to return. And with them comes energy, clarity, power. You feel more whole. You also begin to feel the presence of your soul more often, not just in meditation, but in everyday life, in the space between thoughts, in the breath before a decision, in the quiet, knowing that guides your words, your actions, your intentions. You become less reactive, more responsive, less frantic, more anchored. You start to experience synchronicities not as rare moments of magic, but as natural outcomes of alignment. Life begins to feel like a dialogue between your awareness and the universe, and you are always in conversation. And as your awareness expands, so does your access. You begin to draw wisdom, not just from what you've read or been taught, but from deeper wells. You receive insights that feel ancient, truths that come with a sense of deep recognition. You start to download knowledge that didn't come from books, but from within. This is not fantasy. This is memory. The soul remembers what the mind forgot. You also begin to realize that your journey is not about becoming someone else, but about remembering who you've always been beneath the noise. Every spiritual awakening is really just a return to that original self, the self that existed before conditioning, before fear, before forgetting. And that self, it's always been here, watching, waiting, whispering. The more you align with conscious awareness, the less you need external validation. You become your own source of truth. You stop trying to convince others of what you know. You simply live it. And your energy begins to speak louder than your words ever could. You walk into rooms and shift the atmosphere, not because you're trying to, but because your presence is carrying the frequency of remembrance. And perhaps most beautifully, as your awareness deepens, so does your reverence for this life. Not as an obstacle to overcome or a test to pass, but as a playground for soul expansion. You no longer see yourself as waiting to graduate from Earth. You see yourself as fully in it, participating, creating, loving, becoming. And in doing so, you begin to understand the secret. Your awareness now, the consciousness with which you live, love, breathe, and choose, is not just shaping this moment. It is echoing across timelines. It is recalibrating other lifetimes. It is anchoring new futures. You are not one small being trying to wake up. You are a vast being of light, already awake, simply remembering its own radiance in real time. And once you remember that, you never go back to sleep. What if I told you that your soul was never in danger to begin with, that it was never lost, never damned, never in need of being saved, and that the only thing ever at risk was your awareness of it? You've been told that salvation is something outside of you, that in order to become whole, you must follow certain rules, prove your worth, and be chosen. You've been conditioned to believe that your soul is a fragile thing, easily damaged, easily condemned, possibly rejected. But this is a story rooted in control, not truth, and it has kept you in fear, in guilt, in self-abandonment for far too long. The soul cannot be lost. It is not a thing you misplace. It is not a currency that can be taken from you or stolen by forces outside of your will. Your soul is what you are, not what you possess. You do not carry it like a possession. You express it, you are it, and because the soul is inseparable from the divine, it cannot be severed from its source. No matter what you've done, no matter what path you've taken, no matter how far you think you've strayed, your soul has never stopped being what it is, eternal, sacred, indestructible. The idea that you must earn your soul's redemption is one of the greatest illusions you've ever been taught. It was planted in you to keep you small, to make you afraid of yourself, to convince you that you are unworthy by nature and dependent on external authority for salvation. But the soul does not need saving. The soul remembers. The soul knows. And even when your mind forgets, even when your life feels like chaos or your heart feels shattered, your soul remains whole beneath it all, watching, witnessing, waiting. You are not broken. You have been wounded, yes, misled, conditioned, silenced, but you are not defective. There is no stain on your essence that needs to be cleansed. There is no original flaw that must be fixed. What you've been told about sin, shame, and punishment has more to do with power than with truth. The soul does not operate through guilt. It operates through growth, and growth is not about erasing who you were, it's about evolving through what you've experienced. Even your darkest moments contain light when seen through the eyes of the soul. You've also been told that you are separate from the divine, that there is some vast chasm between you and God, that you must strive your entire life just to be close enough to earn a chance at grace. But what if that's backwards? What if you've never not been close to the divine? What if the divine is not something you approach, but something you emerge from, something that lives within you, breathes through you, feels everything you feel? What if your longing for the divine is the divine, remembering itself through you? The soul doesn't live in fear. It lives in curiosity, in play, in expression. Fear belongs to the ego, to the survival mind, to the parts of you that learned early on that love had to be earned. But the soul knows that love is not earned, it is remembered, and the divine is not measuring your worth, it is reflecting your essence. It is not waiting for you to be good enough. It is calling you to awaken to the fact that you already are. You may feel like you've made mistakes too big to recover from, that you've said things, done things, or failed to do things that have somehow tarnished your soul. But that's the lie. You've confused behavior with essence. You've been taught that errors make you unworthy. But to the soul, every experience, yes, every one, is a portal for evolution. The soul does not recoil from your shadow. It embraces it, not to excuse harm, but to understand its root and to alchemize it into wisdom. This doesn't mean there are no consequences. There are, but not in the form of cosmic punishment, rather in the form of energetic feedback. The energy you put into the world returns to you, not as a sentence, but as a mirror, not to condemn you, but to reveal you to yourself. When you lash out in pain, that pain finds its way back, not as vengeance, but as an opportunity to recognize the wound and heal it. This is the true nature of spiritual growth, not salvation, but integration. You've also been told that certain people are cut off, that there are souls so far gone they can't be redeemed. But this too is illusion. No soul is ever beyond reach. Some may be buried in deep layers of distortion, trauma, and disconnection, but the core remains, always. The spark never dies. Even in the darkest expressions of humanity, the soul is still present, no matter how faint the light may seem. That light is not extinguished, it is obscured, and with enough awareness, enough willingness to see, it can be uncovered. This is not to justify harm or bypass justice, but to understand that every soul, at every point on its journey, is capable of awakening. And awakening is not a reward for the righteous, it is the birthright of every being. So if your life has been filled with fear of being lost, if you've felt the pressure to earn your spiritual safety, if you've internalized the belief that you are somehow damaged at your core, you've been carrying a burden that was never yours. The soul has been with you through it all, even when you forgot, even when you turned away, even when you doubted its existence. It never stopped loving you. It never withdrew. It never gave up. In fact, the moments you felt most alone, that was the soul standing quietly behind the noise, waiting for you to turn inward, waiting for the silence between breaths, waiting for the crack in your resistance, not to judge you, but to remind you that you are not here to be saved from yourself. You are here to reclaim yourself. And that reclamation begins the moment you choose to believe a different story, the moment you stop asking, "Am I worthy?" and start asking, "What do I already know deep within me?" That knowing, that inner whisper, is your soul speaking, and it has never lied to you, not once. It may have been drowned out by fear, by conditioning, by external noise, but it has always been there. You don't need to be rescued. You need to be remembered, by yourself, by the part of you that knows who you are, beyond fear, beyond form, beyond this moment in time. That part of you that feels infinite when you're staring at the stars, that soft ache in your chest when you hear a truth that resonates so deeply it feels like home. That's not imagination, that's recognition. The soul cannot be broken, it cannot be destroyed, and it does not need permission to be sacred. It already is, you already are. So the next time someone tells you that you need to be saved, ask yourself, saved from what? From your humanity, from your experiences, from your capacity to evolve. Never needed redemption. You are not a fallen being crawling back to heaven. You are a luminous being rising from within it. And that changes everything. What if I told you that the most important truth about who you are was never truly lost? It was buried. That for centuries, cultures, systems, and powers have worked, consciously or not, to dim that truth so you'd forget what lives inside you. That beneath every doctrine of fear, every story of unworthiness, every system designed to make you doubt yourself, there has always been one sacred truth whispering beneath it all: you are divine. This isn't a metaphor. This isn't poetic comfort. This is the core reality they never wanted you to remember. Because when you remember it, not just with your mind, but with your being, you become ungovernable by fear. You stop bending to systems that rely on your guilt. You stop looking to external authorities for salvation. You stop participating in the illusion that you are small, limited, or dependent on approval to access your own light. And when that happens, you don't just wake up. You become dangerous to anything built on control. There's a reason this knowledge was suppressed. A reason stories about your soul were rewritten into tales of damnation and debt. A reason the idea of reincarnation was removed, diluted, or demonized in many traditions. Because if you knew the truth, that you are an eternal being, exploring life through countless forms and dimensions, here not to be judged but to create, you would stop playing the roles they assigned you. You would stop identifying with the mask. You would start remembering. And remembering, in this context, is not just recalling facts. It's reclaiming energy. It's awakening to the pieces of yourself that have been hidden in the shadows, stored in your cells, carried through lifetimes like quiet embers waiting for your breath. Because when you remember, you ignite. You activate a frequency that has been dormant, and suddenly, you don't just know who you are, you feel it, you embody it, you become it. This is what makes remembering so powerful. It's not about returning to the past. It's about releasing the illusions that kept your future bound. It's about recognizing that the divine doesn't live in some far-off realm, waiting for you to arrive. It lives in you, breathing through your every thought, pulsing in your intuition, rising in your longing for something more. That longing is the soul calling itself back home. And when you answer that call, when you stop waiting for someone to hand you permission to be who you already are, you change everything. You stop playing the game. You start living the truth. You move through the world differently. Your choices become aligned not with fear or expectation, but with resonance. You start asking different questions. Not, am I enough? But, what version of myself wants to emerge next? Not, how do I fit in? But, where is my soul calling me to stand out? That's the shift. And that's why this knowledge was kept from you. Because a being who remembers their own divinity does not obey out of fear. They create from knowing. And systems built on control cannot survive beings who create freely. But this truth, this remembrance, is not something anyone can take from you. They can hide it, they can distort it, but they cannot erase it, because it lives in your dreams, in your déjà vu, in the way your heart leaps when you hear something that feels real. It lives in your longing for more, in your quiet refusal to accept a life that feels false, in your hunger for freedom, not just physical freedom, but energetic freedom, the freedom to be who you are across dimensions. And this remembering isn't about becoming someone new, it's about shedding everything that was never really you, the roles you were assigned, the fears you inherited, the shame you were taught to carry. You begin to strip those layers away, not violently, not in anger, but with reverence, with clarity, with the deep knowing that nothing true can be lost, and nothing false can be sustained. This is the death they don't talk about, the ego death that precedes rebirth. Not physical death, but the crumbling of the false self, the version of you that played by the rules just to survive, the identity built on protection instead of purpose. When that self dissolves, what's left is not emptiness, what's left is truth, raw, luminous, undeniable truth. And it's in that space, between what was and what is becoming, that the soul steps forward, not as a concept, but as presence, as a frequency, as you. And this version of you doesn't need to convince anyone of its worth. It doesn't need to be validated, it just is. Radiant, whole, enough. That's what happens when you embrace your full soul self. Life stops being a maze to escape or a test to pass. It becomes an open field, an infinite canvas. And the question changes from, what must I do, to, what do I want to create? You begin to feel your power, not as dominance, but as alignment. You stop reacting and start responding. You move from intention, from clarity, from soul-led truth. And this doesn't mean you won't face challenges, but now you meet them with different eyes. You understand that even the pain has purpose, that the contractions come before expansion, that every breakdown is a portal to deeper authenticity. You stop fearing the dark because you know it's the soil where the soul takes root. You stop running from yourself and start walking toward the fire, knowing it will only burn away what isn't real. The truth they never wanted you to remember is that you were never lost. You were never broken. You were never less than. You've been whole all along, and the journey was never about proving that. It was about realizing it. And now, you are. You are no longer just learning who you are becoming it. Becoming the light that no longer apologizes for shining. The voice that no longer waits for permission to speak. The presence that no longer hides behind roles or masks or labels. You are becoming the soul in motion, the truth in form, the bridge between worlds. And once you reach this space, once you remember with your whole being, you don't just change your life. You change your frequency. You begin to ripple outward into every soul you touch. You become a reminder for others. A living mirror that says, yes, you too, you are that powerful, that divine, that free. That's the revolution they tried to prevent, but it's too late now, because you remember.